Welcome, everybody. We have with us Sue Paish, KC, although it doesn't say KC there. Sue personifies this show. She represents the transformation from a successful and highly respected lawyer to a successful and highly respected CEO. Sue, welcome to the show.
Thank
So
you.
happy to have you here. And you win the busiest schedule contest. Okay? So you've gone from managing partner at Fasken, which was then Russell and Dumoulin, to CEO of Pharmasave and LifeLabs, to the Hall of Fame for Canada's top 100 most influential women, and one of Canada's top 25 women lawyers. Past chair and governor of the Vancouver Board of Trade, the Business Council of BC, and those are just a few of your prolific pursuits and recognitions. So I'm going to come out and ask you the question I've wanted to ask for years. Sue Paish, what is the secret?
The secret?
What's the secret?
No secret. Do what I love. Well, I'll tell you, I introduce myself the same way, which to no matter what who the audience is, which in some ways explains why I've done what I've done. I'm the really proud mom of 3 amazing young Canadian women. I'm the nana of 4 tiny Canadian little girls, one of whom is a week old today. And everything I've done for the past 35 years, I've done to try and build a better Canada and a better British Columbia for my kids and all of their friends, which in today's connected world is many young people and teenagers and children in this country. And every time I've made a change in my life or taken on or declined an opportunity, I put it against that lens. Is that gonna help me help them? It's that simple.
That's the secret.
It's that simple. Yeah.
That's the vision.
I won't call it vision. It's what makes me tick. And I try to never confuse who I am with what I do. Who I am is a mom and a wife and a nana and a sister and committed to building a better Canada. What I do is engage in pursuits and activities and jobs and other things to help build a better future for them.
I want to review some of your journey. I'm going to go back a bit, Sue.
Right.
You described yourself as growing up in small town BC. Where? Where was that?
Born in New Denver,
Okay.
quite small. Lived my early years at Canal Flats, even smaller. Last time I checked, just over 1,000 people. Moved to Vancouver. Family moved to Vancouver in the mid-1960s. And then probably one of the most defining parts of my life, which some people know, some don't, in 1968, for reasons that I've never understood, I was 9 years old, and my grandfather in England had died, and my parents thought, what better thing for a 9-year-old to do than to go to England for 2.5 years and take care of grandma by myself, no family, and didn't see my parents or family for 2.5 years. When I was 9, came back just after, about 11 and a half. I was about 11 and a half. And you grow up awfully fast in that environment.
So,
yeah.
you said you had no particular vision in high school, which rather shocked me. And then you were told that you'd make a good bedside nurse, I understand. Do you remember that?
Well, the vision, I said I didn't have a particular vision in high school because growing up, the talk around the family table was that I was going to be a doctor. There were no doctors in the family. There were no lawyers either, but there were no doctors. And so I thought that was my calling until I remember very clearly, grade 9, we had to dissect a cow's eye and we had to deconstruct a chicken and reconstruct the chicken skeleton. And I knew at that moment being a doctor was not for me.
You did not take the heart out of the frog like I did and put it somewhere else and watch it, how long it beat for?
No, I missed that class.
Okay.
I missed that opportunity.
And so
but that would have been further evidence of why I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, it also explains a lot about my personality, okay? So, when did you become interested in what we do in law? And I understand that had something to do with GM.
Yeah, it sure did.
Okay, why don't you tell us that?
So after I realized I was not going to be a doctor, I started to think about what did I like doing, and business and industry really caught my eye. My dad was a small businessman, and I really loved watching what he did, and so I went into commerce at UBC, and the dean at the time came to me and said, I was at the end of first year, said, you should apply for this scholarship. It's a scholarship with General Motors. And he gave me the paper, then paper package, to take home and read. And I read it, and the very first paragraph said, applicants must be in their ultimate or penultimate year of the program. And I thought, I'm in first year. I don't qualify. So I went back to Dean Dan and said, I don't actually qualify. And he said to me words that I've always remembered. Well, that's a rule. And you don't want to break a rule, so you just declare. We'll declare in the application that you don't qualify, and then they can decide whether they want to give it to you or not. So that's what we did. I got the scholarship and was out in Oshawa, working in Oshawa, in the Human Resources Department one year and the Labor Relations Department the second year. And in that second year, I was taken to a labor arbitration. And I watched what the lawyers did, and I was in the room with the GM lawyers as they were discussing strategy, and I just felt alive. I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be like you. So I went back to my office in the labor department, and I pulled out the gargantuan General Motors phone book at the time, and I looked up the legal department. And the first title I saw was General Counsel, a guy named Rod Smith. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to phone him. And so I did. I picked up the phone and phoned General Counsel for GM Canada. And he answered the phone. And I said, here's who I am. And I'm working for George Tomlinson in the Labor Department. And I just went to an arbitration. I'd really like to learn more about what it's like to be a lawyer. And he said, well, come on over. And so he gave me directions. Oshawa is full of GM buildings, and gave me directions, and I walked into his office, and we sat down and we had this fantastic conversation about the practice of law and what it means to be a lawyer and the qualities of a good lawyer. And I was literally 10 feet off the ground the rest of the evening until I came to work the next morning and said to my supervisor, he said, how was your evening? I said, oh, it was great. I called the general counsel. I had a great conversation. He said, you did what? I think he thought he was going to be fired. But that's what got me into law school, was seeing this labor arbitration and having a conversation with an incredible lawyer who must have thought I was just the craziest person on the planet for waltzing into his office at the grand age of, I think it was probably 19, and having this conversation about becoming a lawyer. And that's what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you went to law school, graduated law school in 1982. You articled at Russell and Dumoulin, now Fasken. And what area of law did you practice at Russell and Dumoulin?
Labor. So labor. I started in the Labor Relations Department, and at that time Russell and Dumoulin had, no paid advertisement here, the best labor relations department in the city at the time, and it was just fantastic to be able to learn under the leaders there, Ben Trevino and Gavin Hume and Kevin O'Neill and Peter Sheen, just fantastic people. And through the mid to late 80s, we saw an emergence, a move a little bit from traditional labor and employment into this new area of human rights. And I became quite interested in this whole concept of human rights and discrimination and all of those things that were just emerging in the late 80s, early 90s, and that's where my practice headed.
Do you recall the most stressful part of practicing law? When I thought about that question, I thought probably Sue did not feel any stress, but we all feel stress, so there must have been some stressful part of it.
Well, I mean, all lawyers know you work hard.
Yeah.
I can't say, I never for a moment until I had finished being managing partner did I ever think of doing anything other with my life. You know, we all work hard, and I loved it. I can say, having 2 children in 2 years, less than 2 years, and keeping a full practice added a whole new level of juggling.
Yeah.
But I never really felt stressed.
Probably being surrounded by the most preeminent lawyers in Vancouver was helpful too.
Fantastic firm.
Yeah.
Fantastic firm.
Do you recall the most satisfying part of what you did, practicing law?
Yeah, I'd say it was when I moved away from the traditional sort of litigation end of the practice into the latter part of my practice, which was investigations and training. So with the support of the department, Trish Jansen, who was much senior to me, and myself and a few others started the sort of human rights practice as a sub-practice under the Labor Department. And I got engaged in doing investigations of harassment complaints, which were incredibly, if you want to talk about stress, it's really difficult to do those when you hear about some of the things that were going on in workplaces all around us. But the satisfying part of that practice was being able to resolve those complaints, being able to do training and education of boards and leadership teams on how to build more effective teams and more effective workplaces, and break those bonds of what does a workplace look like, which is what really gave rise to a lot of the harassment complaints.
Those were the very early stages.
Really early days.
Yeah.
Really early days.
And then you became the first woman and the youngest managing partner at Russell & Dumoulin.
Yeah.
And for 6 years or so.
Yeah.
And you expanded that firm
Yeah.
to 9 offices.
Yeah.
And then somebody, whoever was writing, liked to use large words. They said 3 continents. You expanded into 3 continents.
Okay.
And, you know, expansion, when I read about you, Sue, significant expansion seems to be a common thread in everything you do. Can it?
Well, growth.
Growth.
Yeah, growth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you say anything about that?
Well, you know, becoming the managing partner was definitely not on the plan. Not that I've ever had. I've never had a career plan. And it came totally out of the blue. And I did what I have found a lot of women do. When I got the call saying, hey, why don't you put your name forward for managing partner? Well, here's all the reasons why I can't do it. You know, I'm too young, I'm a labor lawyer, I'm female, I got 3 kids, I don't know anything about leading a law firm. I'm like, what? This is a crazy idea, you guys are nuts. And then as I got drawn into the opportunity and what could this mean for the firm, and at that time I had our daughters, no granddaughters at that point, I thought, you know what, if we could grow Russell & Dumoulin into a national law firm, and if we could demonstrate how fantastic the lawyers in British Columbia are to the whole country, and I started to think, wow, this could be a good thing for younger generations and the articling students, and I started to think in that way. I didn't think about 9 offices on 3 continents and all of that. I thought about it in the context of how can we paint this really promising picture and this excitement for the lawyers that are working so hard in our firm and doing such tremendous work, and bring it to the rest of Canada.
That's a vision.
Yeah, that was the motivation.
That's a
Yeah.
vision. You've said, carrying on here,
Uh-oh. What did I
quote,
say?
I told you I was going to quote you, Sue
Yeah, okay.
Paish. I decided one day that I didn't want to wake up when I was 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That must have been 40 years ago or something. And wonder what it would be like to do something other than practice law.
Yeah, I remember that
Do
really
you remember
clear.
that?
Yeah, 100%. I remember
There's a
where we
lot
were.
of people in our audience who are going to feel that way sometime.
Yeah.
Or have felt that way or will feel that way.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
Well, it came out of 2 things. At the time I was elected managing partner, the constitution of the firm described the managing partner role as two terms of 3 years each. So it was a fixed term appointment. And so at the end, coming up to the end of that 6th year, I sort of waved my hands at the board and others in the firm, I'm finished, I'm done. And there was some conversation about continuing on and rearranging the provisions of the documents and principles of the firm so that it wasn't restricted to 6 years. And it was that moment, again, thinking about what if, what if I didn't do this anymore? What if I did something different? And it felt really exciting. What if there is a life outside of law where I can have fun and continue to build towards this vision for Canada? And that's why I did it.
Sue, you just epitomized one of the visions of this show when you said that. I want you to know that, okay?
Uh-oh.
Well, moving on.
Yeah.
You also said that it was a scary moment for you.
Well, yeah, because I didn't have anywhere to go.
I heard that.
Yeah, and I can tell you a funny story on this front.
Yeah.
So Brad and I talked about it, and he had retired. He was in the movie industry, and then he retired early on when I became managing partner to take care of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a very unusual family in that regards at that point in time. Stay-at-home dad, mom in the legal profession, and but he was fully supportive when I said, look, I want to do something else. I don't know what it is, but I want to do something else. And so then we spoke to each of the children, and I'll never forget our then, I guess she would have been about 8 years old, and I said, Mommy's not going to be at the law firm anymore, and I'm going to go and do something else. And she was really worried that Gavin was mad at me, that Gavin Hume was mad at me, because he was sort of the pillar of leadership for all my years at the firm for our kids. And I said, no, Gavin's not mad at me. And she looked at me, she goes, so you're going to leave the law firm? Are we going to go on welfare? And at that moment, I thought, oh gosh, I hope not, but I hadn't really thought that through. So yeah, I left, and I had nothing really to go to at that point.
So how did you deal with that fear?
Well, quite quickly, I talked to some friends and told them ahead of time that I was thinking of doing this. What did you think? I talked to a few friends that I made in industry and in the community, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna have no trouble." And what was stunning was when word got out. I can remember talking to a fellow at the hockey game on the Saturday night, a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, Monday this is going to come out, so, hey, if you know of anything that I might be able to do." And he's like, "Oh my God, you're going to be overrun with things." And I thought, oh, I don't know. So that was a Saturday. On Monday, the news came out. On Tuesday, I had 3 calls, and they were all, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you." And one was in government, and I'll just tell you this story because it was quite a funny one. I was in government, and it was to consider being a deputy minister, and I thought, oh, hadn't thought of that. Wonder what that would involve, and so I did some digging around, and I was actually kind of intrigued by it. And then I phoned a really good friend, and she said, for someone like you, in that role, you'd either commit a crime or a crime would be committed against you. You're not cut out to do that. You got to keep your arms really close to your sides, and that's not you. But it was really quite astonishing, and it gave me confidence to not lack confidence in myself going forward, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of us who stay in a role a long time maybe build that sense that if I'm not doing this, I can't do anything else. And I bucked that feeling and have never looked back.
I know I felt that way, and I'm sure a lot of our colleagues feel that way.
Yeah.
Particularly challenging to leave something that you felt so confident about and have nothing planned.
Yeah, and love doing. There were moments in the law firm for sure that were tough when we did the merger vote. I'll never forget that. Super tough. There were lots of times when, I wanted to advocate for something and it was really non-traditional and wasn't welcomed with open arms. Not, lawyers are good at debating and have their own views, and that's what makes lawyers such strong contributing members of the community and industry and society. But as a managing partner, it's you're a bit of a fire hydrant. and every one of those dogs coming by thinks that they've got a better idea than you have. And so, it was really hard work. And I wanted to make sure that in moving away from the firm, I wasn't moving away because of the hard work. I was moving away because I'd accomplished what I set out to do in that role, and I wanted to explore what else there might be there. As you said, sitting in the boat with Brad and saying, I'm going to be 50 soon, and I wonder what else is out there. I don't want to wake up when I'm 50 and say, wow, I've never done anything else.
Well, I have here you did something else, and that was in 2007. And I had a great chuckle, Sue, when you told the chair of Pharmasave, who you later worked for, who recruited you, you looked at the chair and said, "But I'm not a pharmacist."
Well,
that gave me a really good laugh, Sue.
Well, I'll tell you, I still remember that meeting because I sat on the board of Pharmasave. That was one of my first boards. And we knew that our CEO at the time was retiring, and I had just announced that I was leaving law. And Bill came up to me. We were at a board meeting and we were getting breakfast, and he said, "Hey," he says, "why don't you throw your hat in the ring for the CEO role?" And I looked at him. It felt like a split second. I said, "I'm not a pharmacist. I don't know retailing. I don't know merchandising. I don't know marketing. I don't know advertising." And he looked at me and he goes, "Okay, we got lots of pharmacists, we got a merchandising department, we got a marketing department, He goes, "What we don't have is strategy, vision, and leadership." And I thought, you think I can do that? And so I did put my hat in the ring and I became the CEO.
Was that a difficult transformation from lawyer to CEO?
No, not at all. It was not difficult at all because in the context of being managing partner, at least the way I looked at the managing partner role, it really is about strategy and vision and leadership and asking the question, what if, why not, rather than an operational CEO. I've never been an operational CEO. So moving into the CEO role at Pharmasave, it was a phenomenal opportunity to say, where do we want to take this organization, and what if we do this, and what are the possibilities on the horizon? And I know we're really good pharmacists, and I know we've got really good community connections. What about this? What about more technology? What about a different approach to community engagement? And it was super fun.
Interesting, because when I thought about this, I thought about lawyers being logical and generally risk adverse, and you having the vision and creativity, which are quite different attributes. So that's why I asked about a difficulty in transformation.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'll tell a story. I did get a call the first day. I actually got a lot of calls the first day from people at then Fasken's. How are you doing? Thank you, congratulations. I got wonderful calls. It was fantastic. And I got a call from one of the partners, and he said, I still remember where I was looking and where I was seated, and he said, "So what's it like?" I said, "It's like hour 8, so I'm not really sure." And I said, "Call me back in a week." And he goes, "But no, what's it like?" And I said, "What do you mean, what's it like?" He goes, "Have you had to fill in a timesheet?" And I said, "Actually, no." And I said, "I guess that is one difference. I'm going to be evaluated based on what I actually deliver to the organization, not how many hours I've worked." And I had never thought of it through that lens, but it was when he called me and said, "Do you have to fill in a timesheet?" And I thought, wow, that is a real difference between industry and professional services.
Tell me about that, Sue, because I just had my performance review at the Law Society that I've never had before.
Wow.
And it was frightening, okay? And I also have to fill out timesheets, okay? But the funniest part of going to work for an organization, and I'll just say the story because you'll appreciate it, is when I got to the Law Society, I had to meet with HR. And they said to me, "Mr. Rose, your lunches are between 11 and 2. I said, "Perfect. That's exactly when Mr. Mormon and I used to have lunch, between 11 and 2. "No, sir, an hour between 11 and 2.
Yeah, it's not quite, we don't quite have those kind of lunches either.
So, Sue, tell us, because we all want to know what legal skills you apply to your positions as CEO.
Well, CEOs, in my definition of CEOs, are really responsible for the strategy, the vision, and the implementation of the strategy and the vision, inspiring and encouraging employees, leaders, customers, community, if appropriate, government relations. It's really about painting that picture of the possible, and then making sure you've got the people, the culture, the skill sets, the technology or the structure to make sure that you can deliver on that vision and that strategy. And when you're buried in 4,000 pages of discovery transcripts and things like that, you might not think of the legal role as being that. But in fact, and I've reflected on this a lot over the last many years, lawyers really, whether you're in the commercial world, whether you're in M&A or whether you're in litigation, lawyers are painting a picture of an outcome, figuring out the pathway, call it the case plan, whatever you want to call it, figuring out the pathway to that outcome, making sure that you've got all the data, all the information, all the people, all the processes lined up to complete your plan and deliver on the outcome. It's not that much different than being a CEO. And I'd say the two things that I see lawyers in the business community have that maybe others don't have is a real ability to identify issues and pathways to resolving them.
With precision.
With accuracy, with clarity, and with the determination to get it done. I'm still surprised sometimes how business leaders can look at an issue and it looks like this, and the lawyer in the room will say, well, that's the core issue, and what do we need to do to resolve it or to capture that opportunity? It's that kind of thinking that's really, really important in industry. I think lawyers just have it every day.
You stayed at Pharmasave for 5 years and then became CEO of LifeLabs.
Yep.
And Sue, you led the rollout of non-invasive prenatal genetic testing as CEO of LifeLabs. Amazing.
Yep.
And you led the company through its most significant period of growth.
Yep.
That company delivered over 1 million laboratory tests, at which point I'll roll down my sleeve. And there were 5,400 employees by the time you left.
Yep.
And you built LifeLabs into one of the health technology leaders in this country. Yep. You spent 5 years there.
Yep.
Does anybody kid you that you're only able to hold down a job for 5 years?
In fact, I'm about to have my 5-year anniversary at the cluster, and a whole bunch of people have said, what's the plan? And I'm like, oh, I don't know.
And Sue Paish, how does it feel being responsible for blood being drawn for most lawyers in Canada?
Well, I've never thought of it that way. LifeLabs was a fantastic experience, and it was interesting how I got there, because I sat on the board of LifeLabs, and as you might imagine, I'm not a particularly quiet board member. I'm a very engaged board member, and I got a call one night. We were in Toronto. We had a board meeting in Toronto. And I got a call from the board chair asking to meet at 9 o'clock the next morning. And I started to replay the movie in my head of that day's board meeting. And I thought, uh-oh, I overstepped. I'm getting fired. And it really bothered me. And I went down to the gym, had a big workout, and it still bothered me. So I called him back. And I said, Michael, is there anything I need to prepare for tomorrow's meeting? Be really upfront with me, okay? Because I want to make sure I'm ready. And he said, no, I just want you to be yourself. We just want a conversation with you. And I didn't believe him. And I walked into the room, and the chair and the vice chair were sitting at the end of a table that felt like it was 50 feet long. And I just thought, oh my gosh, my board career is at an end. And they said, actually, we'd like you to be the new CEO of LifeLabs. And I was like, that is the silliest idea in the world. And I did exactly what I had done with Bill when he asked me to be CEO of Pharmasave. I said, okay, I don't know anything about labs. I don't know really much about the health sector. I live in Vancouver. I'm not moving to Toronto. I went all these, and I went on my fingers all like this, and they put, my chair put his fingers up. He was, okay, we can deal with this, we can deal with this, we can deal with this, we can deal with this. And And then the plan was to double the size of the company in 5 years, and we doubled the size of the company in about 14 months. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that that's the way to go with 2 big transactions, but boy, it was fun. And on the prenatal testing, on the non-invasive prenatal testing, again, as a mom, and
Yeah.
I've shared with you my vision,
Yeah.
I heard all of these reasons of why we couldn't bring non-invasive prenatal testing to Canada and all the regulatory hurdles. And I can remember standing up in a meeting, there were some Ministry of Health people there, this in Ontario, and I said, I am not going to now allow another family to go through the grief of not knowing about the genetic condition of their child when there is technology that allows you to do that. So we brought it in, unlicensed, unfunded. We brought it in and hoped that citizens would pick it up. And boy, did they ever. And soon it became part of the regular testing. So super proud moment
I bet.
to drive that forward.
I bet.
And sort of look the devil in the eye and not
Yeah.
be prepared to accept a 5-year regulatory review process for something like that.
But you got to look the devil in the eye if you're CEO.
Yeah.
And you want growth and you have a vision, I suspect.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good moment.
And then in 2018, you were appointed CEO of Digital Technology Supercluster.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, what that is, and
Yeah.
and what your role was?
I'm still there. Yeah, so I'd been involved with the cluster program since about 2017, in fact, earlier than that in 2016. So just the short story on how it came together. Canada's had an abysmal record of economic growth in terms of GDP per capita. Our GDP has grown primarily because of increases in oil prices or participation rates. We have a much higher participation rate of women in this country than other countries do in terms of workforce participation. But our actual productivity rate, our ability to scale companies has been going down for many, many years. In 2016, the Government of Canada created a group called the Growth Council, and their mandate was to find ways to change that trajectory. I mean, we were 11 out of 13 on the OECD's innovation scorecard. Even humble Canadians would say 11 out of 13 is pretty bad. And I was following all of this. And Dominic Barton, a good British Columbia boy, chaired the Growth Council, and I had lots of conversations with them. And they came out with a recommendation about how to change the way Canada approaches technology innovation. And historically, the way we have approached it is if someone's got an idea, we use taxpayers' dollars and we say, we'll review your idea. We've reviewed your idea. It looks good. Here's a check. Have a nice day. I hope it works. So we fund ideas. We don't expect results, and we wonder why we get the results we have. What the Growth Council's recommendation was is you turn all of that on its head. First of all, you don't fund technology ideas. You fund the idea, you fund the solutions to big problems. So start with big problems. How is technology going to solve a big problem? Secondly, you don't slingshot invest. You don't invest in a single company. The theory is you can come up with a better solution if organizations work together than if one company comes up with a solution on its own. So collaboration, collaborative innovation. And thirdly, you only invest in results, not in ideas. And that's what gave rise to the clusters. So having been involved in this for quite a while, when the cluster program was announced, I thought, well, this is, I've said this in other forums, this is some of the most ambitious policy that I've seen come out of a government of Canada since the 1970s, when Canada said it was going to put its mark on the ground in being a global leader in human rights. It's that ambitious. It's certainly the most ambitious industrial policy I've seen in a long time. And it's got a massive opportunity to fail and a sliver of opportunity to succeed. So why not? Why not try and make it work? So I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I thought maybe I would apply to work at one of them. And then a guy came up to me one night at a reception and said, hey, you should lead one of these. And I did my usual, I can't do this, I'm not tech, I'm not this, I'm not that. And he goes, no, we've talked, we think you should lead this. And I was like, I'm not a tech person. And so here we are. And I'll just tell you one little story of some of the success we've had.
Well, I was going to ask you that.
It's a
Yeah.
this is a crazy model, and it works. I wasn't sure if it would work, but it works. So next month, December, the World Health Organization will take a Vancouver company and put it on the world stage and say, this Vancouver company, through the cluster program, so working with others, has produced the world's leading technology on antimicrobial resistance, called AMR for short. It's one of the top 10 global health threats identified by the World Health Organization. We all know what AMR is because we've all had 2 or 3 or even 4 shots for COVID. Viruses evolve. Viruses evolve to evade vaccines and to evade antibiotics. There's an issue about overprescription of antibiotics that I'll leave aside. But that's created a huge global health threat where around the world, millions of people die every year because they don't get the right vaccine or they don't get the right antibiotic. That's not because healthcare practitioners don't know how to prescribe. It's because they don't have the current data on the current strain of the virus that they're treating. So these young folks down the street here in Vancouver came to us and said, this is a big problem. We think we can solve it with data. I'm thinking, really? It sounds more like a science experiment. No, it's a data issue. So we say, okay, let's get some people around the table. Let's figure it out. So they've created the world's first platform so that anywhere in the world, if somebody has a cell phone connection, they can get the current prescribing guidelines for any one of hundreds of thousands of viruses and other pathogens, saving millions of people. That's pretty cool.
Financed by the cluster.
Financed by the cluster.
That is cool.
And as I've said to some folks in Ottawa, I don't know the last time the World Health Organization put a Canadian company on the stage and say, they've built the world's best technology. I could go on the rest of the day
Proud
with stories
moment.
like that. Yeah, we got a
Proud
lot of them.
moment.
We got a lot of them.
So, Sue,
Can I just tell you one more?
you
This is
can
in a different.
tell me all the
this in
things
a
you wanna
this in a
tell me.
different vein. So you get. So I've never worked in.
you know what? Everybody out there, look how excited Sue gets about what she does. Just remember that, okay?
It's just super cool. This is about working with government, though,
Okay.
so that's not an exciting one. But this is kind of a fun one because you guys, some of you know me, and you'll get this. So you get all these metrics from government of all the things that you have to do in 5 years. Totally cool, totally expected. So we move fast, right? We move fast. We're private sector driven, and so we hit or exceed all of our 5-year goals in 3 years. And so I get a call, and the call goes like this: "Hey, Sue, yeah, you guys are moving really fast." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, it's really great. We got this and this. You need to slow down." And I thought, oh boy, you're having the wrong conversation with me. And so it's really interesting that we've still got this culture that we want everybody to be kind of at a C+ level when it comes to these kinds of programs. And what's been great about the cluster program and what the digital cluster has done is that we've been able to break through that and say, we're going to move fast, we're going to deliver results, we're going to exceed our goals, we're going to do more than you thought we could do. And industry is just coming to the table day after day after day with ideas. We focus on 3 areas. We focus on health, we focus on decarbonizing natural resources. We decided to do this in 2018, not last year. Decarbonizing natural resources and providing skills for the digital world. So it's really cool. Love it. I love it.
There's lawyers out there that probably wonder about this. I want to ask you, because I dealt with this when I was a lawyer. What do you do, Sue? How do you handle when you're facing a challenge that just seems too overwhelming to tackle? How do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you've been confronted by that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
A lot, yeah.
A lot. So 3 things. One, my grandma told me a long, long time ago, anticipation is usually worse than reality. So try to remind myself that it's probably not as bad as I might fear it is, so that's one thing. The second thing is I'm really, really lucky to have a community of friends and colleagues who are smarter than me, more experienced than me, kinder and nicer than me, just better people overall. And I will quite often phone a friend or phone a couple of friends and say, hey, can I help? Can I get some help? There's nothing more powerful, I find, than to say to someone, how can I help? No matter what their call is. And so, you know, I'll call a few friends and say, before I can say I need some help, they'll say, how can I help? Like, what's going on? How can I help? And get together with a few people and just say, hey, I think the world's coming to an end. And they'll go, no, actually, if you look at it this way, it's way better. So have a good talk with myself, listen to others who aren't as embedded, and then I go on a good goddamn hike up and down Grouse Mountain, which is where I do all my best thinking. My kids, when they were little.
I was going to ask you
yeah,
that.
yeah, I spend a lot of time up there. Yeah.
Because you're going to have some rapid fire questions.
Okay, go ahead. I'll be fast in
One
the answers.
question I have before the rapid fire.
Yep.
What does the future hold for you, Sue?
Oh, man. Well, as I said, I'm a nana. Nothing better, no better job in the world. Spend more time with the grandkids. We bought a house over in Sechelt, which we absolutely love, on the beach in Sechelt. So spend a little bit more time there. And you know, this supercluster program is some of the most bold and ambitious policy I've seen in Canada in decades. And we're just coming up to our first 5 years. And you mentioned, you know, I have this history of 5 years. I'll be there a little bit longer. I want to make sure it's really on good footing. And
does your husband worry about that 5-year thing?
Yeah, he's actually Brad and my daughters are terrified that I'm going to retire.
Oh, okay.
They're of two minds, and actually they were saying this the other day. When are you going to slow down? And then the other one said, "Don't slow down too fast because you won't like it." So, you know, I'll stay engaged in the cluster for a little while, and then I'm really fortunate. I have a fantastic board portfolio, and I love governance and hope to keep doing that for quite a while.
Here's some rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire. Okay, I'm not good.
Would you rather have a LifeLabs blood test or prepare a 10-page legal opinion?
Blood test.
Okay. Worst subject in law school?
Tax.
Your most meaningful honor or recognition?
A badge that my daughters gave me that's on my desk. They were 6, 8, and 10, and it says "World's Best Mom."
Okay.
That's it.
That'll bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah, that's true though.
Yeah. What do you do to chill?
Grouse Mountain. Not the grind.
Right.
Not the grind.
Is there any regret you have about any part of your life?
I try not to have regrets.
Okay.
Try not to.
Yeah.
No.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite song to sing when you're alone? I was thinking of disclosing mine, but then I thought I'd get all sorts of calls later from friends, and they go, "Are you kidding me?" Do you want me to disclose mine first?
Yeah.
Come on, baby, light my fire.
Oh my gosh.
That'll
There's,
take you back.
I'll probably get a lot of, you'll get a lot of response to this that won't be positive. I am a big John Denver fan.
Okay.
I just love John Denver.
Okay.
And good to be back home. It's not a big hit of his, and the other one is Perhaps Love. Super cool songs that just sort of sing to the soul.
Okay. Your favorite spot in this province? It's funny because this is the easiest question, but been the most difficult for you.
No. Grouse Mountain.
Grouse Mountain. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The backside.
The backside.
Not the place for those of you that know Grouse Mountain, where the plane crash is. That's where I hike.
Last question.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming to the show, Sue. You were the first guest that I wanted on here.
Oh, wow.
And you had the busiest schedule. The biggest fish you ever caught is what,
the biggest
Sue
fish.
Paish?
37 pounds. 37 pounds off Lacey Island up in Haida Gwaii. Yeah, it was a good one. Brad caught a 52-pounder.
How long did it take to bring the 37-pound one in?
Oh, not long. You fish really shallow there. It's not like here where you got to put out tons of line.
Yeah.
You fish really shallow. You're about 30 pulls, so you're not very far out.
Yeah.
And the current was, I can remember it clearly. The current was crazy, and we're in a 13-foot fat cat, tiny. It's like not much bigger than a bathtub, right? And it was windy, and it hit hard, and yeah, it was good. The most fun one, though, can I tell you the most fun one? Is we were fishing out at China Creek, and the girls were, I don't know, 6, 8, and 10, and we left them sleeping in the camper. Please don't report us. We could see the camper. Anyhow, I hooked into a fish not too far from the camper at China Creek. You fish pretty close to the campsite, and it took off, and I was playing it, and then it went for the seaweed, for the kelp, and Brad goes, "You got a seal. It's not a fish, it's a seal." And I'm like, "It's a fish." And the girls woke up, and they all came out onto the back of the camper, and they're sitting on the steps, and Brad yells out to the whole campsite, "Mommy's catching a seal. Come and watch Mommy catch a seal." And he's got the snips ready to cut the line, right? And I said, don't you touch this fishing rod. And I reeled it in, and it was 36 pounds. That was that was a fun one, but it wasn't the biggest one. Okay. Just a pound short.
Well, thanks, Sue. Again, it's been delightful for me.
Thank you.
And I'm sure it's been delightful
Super
for everyone.
Fun.
And I'll see everyone in the new year on Tuesday, the 24th of January, and we'll have 2 judges with us, Judge Ellen Gordon and Judge Rose Raven, to talk about their journey in this profession. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Christmas holiday. Thanks again, Sue.
Thank you.